Hello YouTube artists, I'm Kelly Hernig and welcome to In the Studio. Today I'm going to do another painting from the Vintage Chronicles collage pages Fungos by Maremi's Small Art. Here I did a flip through of this a couple weeks ago. I will link that in the video description box below. But I want to share with you what I'm going to do today. I really like how she has these pages in here that kind of look like book pages. I think that that's a really cool idea. And I have a lot of book covers that I bought for mixed media, and I'm going to try to do watercolor on those. So here's what I'm doing. I love the idea of the blue mushrooms here. I like the coloration where it's kind of blue-gray. I will probably add just a touch of purple in there because my cover is red. So I want to make sure that it kind of matches my cover. But the one that I really want to do is the one with the snail on the back here. I love the idea of that little snail being there. So picture that toadstool here will be a blue color, and then I'm going to make the snail part actually red because of my book cover. I like these few little leaves here. I'm going to try to get dark down here, but I also want to make the corners of the book dark. Like this one here. You see how it frames it just a little bit, and I like the roughness of that. I don't know how that's going to work on the paper because I am not putting ground or anything on it. I want to just see what the vintage paper will do. So we're going to start here on the edges and see how grungy we can get it. I really like that grungy effect. So here's what I ended up doing on this. So this is my book cover. It's just the back of a book cover. I find them at library sales. Goodwill is a great place for books for, 10 cents, 50 cents. And I just cut them off, cut the pages out, and I only use the book covers. You can also find book covers on like an Etsy store. Just search for book covers and you'll see a lot of different sellers. And here's what I did. I wanted to make sure that my snail was in the middle. So instead of drawing directly on here, I used tracing paper to draw first. And then I placed it where I wanted it. I just kept moving it around, and he's about right here. I wanted him to have a little bit of room here. I want to write "Be Curious," but then I like the leaves coming forward here. And I will probably touch a little bit of the leaves here. I'm not sure yet. And then what I did was I have handmade graphite. If you've never made graphite before, or a transfer sheet for yourself, I fold it in half just to keep it from getting my drawer dirty. And you rub this with like a dark graphite, say like a 4B or a 6B. If you have the Derwent extra large graphite sticks, that's great because then you can just rub it on there and it goes really quickly. And then what I do is I take a paper towel and I just kind of rub it in, and it gets rid of all the excess powder. And if you have any light areas, I would suggest that you put the graphite on it again and then wipe again. And what you have here is graphite that will totally erase and become invisible. And here is my little snail. Isn't he cute? There were some little tears down here at the bottom. And what I ended up doing was, I like this score tape. It is, let's see what size this is. This is 1/2 inch. They also have 1/4 inch. I just don't have any, so I use the 1/2 inch. I cut a little piece off, and then I lifted the corners and put it under there, and it's double-sided. So once it's down, you just press really firmly. I didn't want it to rip any further, so that's why I used this score tape. And score tape is my favorite. You get a lot on the roll. It's not really expensive, and I will link this down below as well. I'm going to be using my studio palette, and I've got Lunar Blue. I know Lunar Blue and French Gray here. I'm going to mix those two to get my mushroom. I'm going to use this Van Dyke Brown. And I think I want to touch a little bit of the orange or the red into it, because if you can see, my cover is actually this color, but along the edges you see how dark it looks, right? It's not that bright red, it's almost like a dirtier red. So I don't want to go quite this intense, but I do want to add a touch of that red in there just so that it carries the color of the cover throughout. Now you could have put ground on here, which is watercolor ground. I just don't like the way ground looks. For me, it blends it out a lot and I don't get any splash marks. So it's kind of a really flat image when it's done, and that's why I don't like watercolor ground. But if you're worried about putting something on this, if you have clear gesso, you can put that on there. It will give it a tooth. Or watercolor ground. Watercolor ground comes in white, it comes in clear, whatever you want to do, but I'm just working straight directly on paper. So let me kind of mix up my edge coloring here. See how that touch of red just really made it a pretty color that's going to look nice next to my edges here. I'm loving that. I'm just coming with a water brush. So it's just filled with water. I've just kind of rinsed it off and just want to soften that. And I do want to splash because I want those edges to have some texture as well. And I'm not sure if it's going to splash on this paper. We'll see. Oh yeah, it's looking very nice. Looking at my mushroom here and I don't want it even, so I'm going to just go up on my tips there like it's more grassy. I'm also going to take this color and spatter with it. When I spatter, I get a lot more water on my brush. And then I just like to blot them off just a little bit so that they're not so dark. If any of them bother you, you can always come up and let's see, I've got a nice row here, so I want to get rid of those. I'm loving the texture already. So you can see what that's doing. It's drying quite nice too and quite quickly. Okay, I need to mix up a blue now. So I know that I want some lunar blue. Lunar is a separating color by Daniel Smith. I'm absolutely in love with this blue. If you haven't tried the lunar colors, I did a video on the lunar set from Daniel Smith. I will link that in the video description box as well. And I'm going to touch a little bit of this French gray. This French gray is by American Journey. It is a little more gray than Buff Titanium. Buff Titanium has a little more yellow, but Buff Titanium works the same. I really don't know how much time I have to get in there and play. But I do know I want the edge of the snail to look very jagged. And I want this side to be a little darker. So I'm just coming in with some straight lunar there to really give me some nice lines. I'm going to touch a little bit of orange in that just to give me a different color, and it's going to be a more muted color. Orange is the complementary color, so it's going to mute it. See how it's giving it a kind of earthier feel? I love that. I'm going to touch a little bit of that into this. Splash. I've got a lot of water. I can tell with this book cover, it's not letting it really soak down. And because I have so much water up here. But I'm loving what it's doing as far as the coloration. Trying to pull that water around and let it kind of merge a little bit. Wow, is that pretty? Okay, the stem, I'm going to just do with some French gray here. And I'm going to touch a little bit of that dirty color into the French gray, just so that it has some kind of shadows. I'm try to get my darkness in there, and again I'm mixing into that, just that dirty blue with that complementary color in there, because it's going to pull that color and that color together in this stem base, which I think would look really pretty. I'm going to mix up a little of that blue mix. I want to splash some of that color as well. Okay. I'm going to play around with the shell of the snail. The snail body, I'm going to let the mushroom dry, because remember, there's a lot of water sitting on there. So I know if I wet that, it will soak up some of the water. You know, it will lift the color up, I should say. And I don't want that blue into my snail body right now. So I'm going to mix a red here. I want to start with a brighter red, and then we will add shadows to it. Let's see what adding the French gray does. Kind of mutes it down to a pink, which is kind of pretty. You can see I have a lot of water on this. Okay, I'm going to dip into that red. Concentrating, trying to make that round shape really round. Okay, I'm going to touch a little bit of that color that I stained the outside here with. I like that dark. I'm going to add a little more brown to that. I'm going to just take my brush now with water. Let's see if I can pull around the spiral here. Okay, we're going to go into these leaves. I'm just moving around so that everything is having time to dry without me going in there and drying. If I was to blow this, I think it would just blow right off the paper, actually, because the paper is so smooth. This is, I would say, even smoother than a hot press paper. And like I said, the water kind of sits on top. See if you can see the puddles. I mean, it's very wet still. it's not absorbing. And I think because this is the cover page too, so remember there's a lot of glue under this paper connecting it to the actual board of the cover. So that might be something that is keeping the water up on top too, instead of letting it soak in. So I want to add some greenery here, and I'm going to go with my dark green, but I'm also going to go with my yellow green here, my color that I absolutely love. I'm just going to touch a little bit of that green in it, and then I'm going to touch a little bit of red just to dull it. I'm going to the belly of the brush here, just blot on paper towel. What that's going to do is take off some of the moisture on the brush, and I need that. That's a nice color. You see how it doesn't command your attention, which is definitely what I want here. I want these two things to demand you look at them. Again, this is connecting color, giving your work a little bit of harmony by just bringing it the same color to the other side here. While I have that green in there, I'll definitely splatter some of that. Okay, it's been dried. There's still a couple wet spots, but I'll be able to work around that. I want to get some paint on this snail body itself, so I'm going to just use the French gray and a little bit of the brown. I touch just a little bit of blue down here. Okay, with that same color, I'm going to add just a little bit more blue and a little more black, or sorry, brown, and a little bit of the French gray. Now let's deepen that shell. I want definitely more brown in that shell because it's very bright. So I'm just touching brown into that. It's kind of making a darker color like we did here on the edges. I'm looking for where the wet spot is. I'm going to turn this. Gets real skinny there. It's really dark here. I love this darkness here. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come back with a brighter red and add some more lines in there. I really like the greenery here that we have. I want to make the stems a little darker so that we see them. his antenna. I'm going to do that same dark brown color. I'm really loving this part of his, I guess, tail. That's what you want to call it. So I'm going to touch a little bit more of the blue in there. Okay, I'm going to go into that red now. Just making a little brighter color. I want to make this antenna, so that one there is in the front of his face. That one is on the, sorry, that one there is on the back of his face. I want to make the one in the front a little bolder. I'm going to use my Uniball Signo pen to add a couple highlights here. I definitely want to come in and let's see if we can streak some white in there. Oh yeah, just a little bit. It's not necessary to do this, but I think that because the page is so dark, you know, it's got a natural color. I like just that little bitty added white there. It just gives it a little bit more definition. And because we have it everywhere, we have to add it a little places in some leaves. And there is my snail on a toadstool on a book cover. I really love the way that it came out. The texture is really, really pretty. And I enjoyed really working on this book cover. I have a whole stack of book covers. I'm going to pull them out. So let me bring you close so you can see the detail. The white seems a little bright. So what I'll probably do once it's good and dry, I'll probably come back and do like a light wash towards where they come to the stem, like the leaves come to the stem. So here's another piece from the Fungos book. I hope you enjoyed watching it come to life. If you did, please leave me a comment. Tell me your favorite part. And if you are not subscribed, please click the button. And as always, thanks so much for watching.